welcome to the Fantasy Football FAQs. Today we're going to explain how the draft works, how to draft, and how our points are calculated. So we're going to do PPR, which is points per reception, and then we're also going to explain how to change your icon and change your name of your team, because it will help us out how to differentiate from who we're playing from one another. And then if you have any more questions, you can definitely just ask us. So I'm going to turn it over to our commissioner, Pepito Jafrique Martin, so he can answer your questions.
All right, everybody, we're less than a week away from the big day. So I'm going to break this down as simply as I possibly can. Let's start with what PPR stands for, how it works. So PPR stands for points per reception. That means that every time your player catches a ball, it's going to count as 1 point. But that's obviously not the only way you're going to be making points in this league. So what happens is, for every 10 yards receiving your player gets, that's also another point. So let's say Demaryius Thomas runs down the field, catches a ball for 10 yards and gets tackled. He's going to get not only 1 point for that catch, but another point for the 10 yards receiving. Now, if a player runs down the field, catches a ball for 40 yards, and then gets tackled, he'll get 4 points for the yardage and another point, a 5th point, for the catch. So your running backs can do this as well, and your tight ends. If your running back catches a ball, those same stats are going to work just the same. But every time your running back touches the ball and runs with it, that's not a point. But what our points for him will be rushing yards. So every 10 yards rushing, he'll get another point for that as well. Now, if your player finds his way into the end zone and scores a touchdown, that's going to be 6 points. So let's say Demaryius Thomas catches a 60-yard bomb for a touchdown, that's going to be 6 points for the yardage, a 7th point for the catch, and then another 6 points on top of that for the touchdown. That's 13 points. So if your player has a big play, they can get well over 10 points, and you're already looking good for that player for that week. So with the tight ends, works the same way as the receivers, but don't expect for much from them because they're not as quick and they're not as fast and all that stuff. But so I covered how the receivers work, the tight ends work, the running backs, just like I said, the same. Picture, just change it from receiving yards to rushing yards. Now, the quarterbacks, they're going to go down like this. For every 25 yards receiving you have, for every 25 yards passing they have, that's 1 point. Now, every touchdown they throw is 4 points, but every rushing touchdown they have is 6. So here's the difference. Well, here's how your players can get negative points. If your quarterback throws an interception, that's -2. Every time your player fumbles the ball, quarterback, tight end, receiver, whoever, running back, that's also a -2 points. So your players can also be losing you points. So if they have a really rough start to the game, sometimes some players can go a full game and actually get you negative points. So get ready for anything. The last portion, the least important of all the positions, are going to be the defense and special teams, which is 1, and the kicker. Now, I'm not 100% sure how our league has it set up, but everything's stock for the most part. So what will happen is an extra point is worth 1 point. So if your team scores a touchdown and you have the kicker from that team and they decide to go for an extra point, if he makes it, that's 1 point. Now if he misses, he's going to lose a point. And now let's say that team opts to go for a field goal and they didn't make it into the end zone. Anything inside 30 or 40 yards, that's going to be worth 3 points. Anything that's 40 or more, it's worth 2 points. And anything that's 2 points on top of that. So let me go over that again. So anything that's 30 yards or less, that's 3 points. 40 yards or more, 4 points. Anything over 50 yards is worth 5 points. So sometimes kickers can really go off, and they can win you or lose you games. Now with the defense, it's a little tricky. So you're going to see when a game first starts, your defense is going to instantly give you 10 points as soon as the game starts. Now that's the base. So if the opposing team didn't do anything, you're just going to finish with those 10 points. Now the defense can win you, can game you, and lose you points throughout the game. So, for instance, a sack is worth a point. So if your team started out with 10 points, and the first play of the game, your defense sacks the quarterback, they now have 11. Now, if they give up yardage, the more yardage they give up, the less points you have. So if they give up, let's say, over 150 or 200 yards of total offense to the other team, you're going to be losing a point or two there. If they get scored on, the bigger the score the other team has, the less points you have. Sometimes defenses can net you only a few points. Sometimes they can get you over 10. Sometimes they can get you negative if they get beat up really badly. So we'll make another video before that first game, really detailing, and you can go into on the fantasy app. Actually, let's take a look at it right now. Give us a little segue into some of the stuff here. So all we did here, we just logged into the ESPN.com main website. Now from here, we're going to go over to the fantasy tab, and I'm already logged in. So from here, you'll see all the leagues you're in. Now let's do Pepe's Players. So this is my team and Pepe's Players. This is my little man, and I'll show you guys how you can edit these two things right now. So you're going to hit the team settings tab in the blue underneath that icon, and the location and the nickname, think of them as a first name, or as the first part of your name and the last part of your name. So let's say I want to change my team name to Girly Man. Or should I say Girly Man? We're doing a little pun off of Todd Gurley here. We'll leave the abbreviation as Pepe. And you can choose a logo here. You can choose one of the ones that comes with the ESPN Fantasy app, or you can pick one from the web. Has to be small though. Definitely has to be a small image so it can fit. Now let's choose a logo from this bunch here. Let's go with this Ryan Fitzpatrick lookalike. We'll hit select this logo. And we're going to save our team settings there at the top. And now we can view it. We'll just re-click on my team. And there we are, Girly Man. And there's our little man. So, you know how PPR works, for the most part. You know how to change your name and your icons. Now let's get into how the draft works. So I'm going to show you right here. Go ahead and zoom in on that. This is going to be the order. Annalise starting, and it's going to go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way till 12, just like the regular NFL draft. But here's where it differs. In a regular NFL draft, if there were only 12 teams, the team who drafted first at the end of the next round would go first again. But we're doing what's known as a snake draft. So once 1 through 12 goes, because the 12th person had to wait so long to get talent, that person gets the first pick of the second round. This is the second round right here. So instead of going like this and then back to the beginning, we're going to snake through it here. So the 12th pick, the last pick of the first round, becomes the first pick of the second round, and vice versa. So once we go all the way to the end of here, the person who picked first, who now had to wait for all this talent of the second round, gets to go first again. And let's say if you were the 7th pick of the first round, it'll come back around and you'll be the 6th pick there, and you'll switch with that person all the way through. So don't think you're getting shafted on your picks. That's just how the snake draft works to balance everything out. Now I want to go over how to draft. So let's come back over here to the iPad. So here's what your team's going to look like after you've drafted. Well, obviously all these names will be filled up, but in our league we have one quarterback, and these are your starters, mind you. We have one quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, a flex position. Now the flex, it's not complicated. It's just you can plug in any running back, wide receiver, or tight end into the flex position. If you're strong at tight end, you can put a tight end there. If you have a lot of receivers and you don't want them to ride the bench, put them in the flex. If you're strong at running back, same thing. You cannot put a quarterback, a defense, or a kicker into that flex position, so just know that. Now, you also have 7 bench spots. Now, the bench, you don't necessarily want to deem them as bad because at some point, you're going to need players from your bench, whether it's injuries, which are sometimes inevitable, but if you're lucky and you never have injuries, everyone's still going to have a bye week. I don't want you guys to worry too much about the bye weeks when you're drafting players. Draft the people you want and the people that are going to do well. Don't let the bye weeks affect you. You can always trade or bring players off your bench on those bye weeks anyways. So what I want to get at again is when you're drafting, don't draft in the order that I just read those off of. Draft who you think is important, and also remember that these guys aren't made of steel. Football's a contact sport, and especially running backs and receivers, they're going to go down. They're going to have sometimes 1-week injuries, sometimes season-ending injuries. So one of my recommendations would be when you're drafting, try to look at the running backs and the wide receivers first. If you have a quarterback you really like, go ahead and go for that quarterback. But don't be afraid to draft extra wide receivers and extra running backs, even if they're going to be on your bench before you fill out your whole team, because those are the meat and potatoes of your team. Running backs and wide receivers, they're going to score you the most points. You really have to consider them. Now, also another tip, don't draft any more than 2 quarterbacks. I myself am probably, if I'm comfortable with my quarterback, I'm only going to draft 1, but sometimes it's safe just to pick that second guy. There's nothing wrong with that. Running backs, don't be afraid if you have up to 5 running backs, maybe even 6 on your team. You're going to start the 2, but it's never a bad thing to have extras. Not only just for injuries and bye weeks, but also because, because they get hurt and the injuries and the bye weeks, but also sometimes your guys don't pan out and you need that extra depth to sub these guys in and out. Now, tight ends, you only need at most 2. One's good enough, but if you want 2, that's fine. Wide receivers, just like the running backs, don't be afraid to have 4 or 5 of them. And the defense and the kicker, in our league, you can wait towards the end. Unless you feel strongly about them, you can go a little higher. But don't draft more than 1 defense, don't draft more than 1 kicker. You're going to want talent in the other positions. And I think we're going to talk about one more thing. Okay, one last thing. Don't panic too much. When we are drafting, I've given us all 90 seconds per pick. So I really would highly recommend, even if it's the day before or the day of, try to play around on this app, be comfortable with it. I think we're going to have the ability to enter the draft room an hour before the draft. So let's say it's 8 o'clock our time. I'll probably be entering the draft around 7:15, and ESPN is going to give you the option to queue your players. So let's say there's some players we like, a bunch of Broncos, we like Demaryius Thomas, we like CJ Anderson, we like Emmanuel Sanders. Guys like that, you can queue them so you don't have to look for them later. Other high-profile players out there, first-rounders like Antonio Brown, AJ Green, Des Bryant, all these guys, you're going to want to queue them, even towards the bottom, so that you're not scrambling last second. Because 90 seconds is a good amount of time, but if you don't know what you're doing or you're struggling, it can be not enough. So just definitely prepare for that, but 90 seconds is enough to kind of go through and see what you need. So I think that's a pretty good introductory video for you guys. I'll definitely post one more up. We'll post one more up before the draft or the day of the draft, and good luck.